Okay, so I want to make this video today because I saw an article this morning about, how public schools, particularly in New York, but other places throughout America, are making accommodations for Ramadan. And this was from one of these, I consider myself to be a right-wing, somewhat libertarian, classical liberal. And some of these more nationalist or populist websites I'm not as fond of. But I like to be aware of all different views, even views I disagree with, and find nuances and so forth that we could communicate with and find ways to work with. And I'm a person who, in my personal life, is more right-wing. But I also believe that many of the ideals of the American right can jive both with libertarianism and conservatism, and how really libertarianism and conservatism are really essentially the same thing. Which is pretty standard today. Things have changed. You don't see as much, the right saying, they want to really legislate morality issues as much as they want to protect the rights of those who want to practice a more right-wing form of morality to do so. And all of this being said, I think that the tone of these articles, even though they didn't exactly say it in so many words, but the tone was offended by the fact that public schools are allowing Muslims to have prayer on public school grounds and so forth. There was also a case in New York City where a particular school, their prom was during Ramadan, and they asked that no food be served before the fast ends, and different things like that. The issue with the prom, I certainly do not believe that a prom has to coincide with any particular religious. What just happened here? I'm going to make a really good video. And am I still recording? Okay. So I don't think usually I don't think my videos are so good, but this is an important point. When it comes to prom, they don't have to kowtow to a religious minority. Now, if it's in a community like where is that? In Dearborn, Michigan, something like that, where there's, I think, practically a Muslim majority, that's fine, and that's all American. There's nothing wrong with that. Even a sizable minority to discuss these things. I think I want to go through a few of these issues. But a prom is not an obligation in as far as the school goes. When I was in public school, my parents would force me to go to these school dances, and I never wanted to go to them. I was like, what? Why do I have to go? I hated going to them. Had no interest. It wasn't horrible, but it wasn't something. And Baruch Hashem, when I was, around the age of the senior prom, I was already in yeshiva. We didn't have such things. We didn't have to deal with these type of things. Actually, when last year of my senior, even though I went to a co-ed yeshiva, we didn't have these things. And really, to me, a pious Muslim, it boggles my mind. Why would they even want to go to a prom? Like, that's not something that fits into their culture, really. But on the other hand, I understand that they're also assimilating to a certain extent into the American culture. And so there is this dichotomy and this difficulty, but that's not what I didn't want to get off on a tangent about this. But all this being said, there's no reason for a public school to accommodate the prom for Muslims, for Jews, for anyone, On the other hand, something like just going to school, which, is something that the school requires you to do. And since the prayer schedules, are as such, I think it is proper for schools, in a way that's not disruptive, to allow anyone of any religion to pray on school grounds, as long as they're not being forced to do so by the school. Although, to be honest, I personally think that the schools should offer, all of the different options and allow people to have some point in the day of reflection and meditation, and if that's their tradition, prayer. Everyone according to their own tradition in the public schools, because the culture of the public schools has been destroyed because this was abruptly removed from the public schools. And it's not only destroyed the school culture, but it's destroyed American culture. And I spoke about this in other videos, particularly the video about school shootings, of how whether or not one believes in God, we have to be honest with ourselves that school shootings didn't happen back in the days when there was compulsory prayer in public school. And no, I'm not saying there should be compulsory prayer in public school. We should recognize and celebrate the religious and spiritual traditions of all different religions, including Christians, including Jews, and including Muslims. And also, this being said, the average Muslim in America tends to be a moderate Muslim who seeks to practice his religion much the same way Jews practice their religion, our religion. It's very similar. There are many similarities between our religions. The basic difference to me is that, as a believing Jew, our religion was revealed in front of millions of people, and so that's how we know it's true. And theirs was, one guy alone in the cave said that not even that Allah talked to him. He said that the Malak Gabriel spoke to him, that the angel Gabriel spoke to him, the Malak Gabriel. And so that's not a reason to change the whole religion, but all that being said, the fact of the matter is there are 1 billion people in the world who are adherents to this faith, and so there's reason to respect that. For whatever reason we want to respect it, if not just for the sheer fact of the matter of the power that they yield by their numbers, even if they're wrong. And also the similarities and the things that make them right mean that, Jews can have respect really for all religions, but certainly for the Abrahamic religions of Christianity and Islam that are basically based in Judaism. We can find a certain level of fellowship without having necessarily brotherhood, but fellowship, meaning there's a distance, but there's also friendship. You can be a friend without being a brother, perhaps. I've also seen discussions about this. Meaning we're different, but we can still live in peace with each other and show respect to one another. And for sure, as human beings, as individual human beings, to show respect to one another. And to seek peace. We can celebrate our differences and celebrate our similarities as well. But that's not what I'm talking about right now. What the main point I want to make in this video, and I'm just so distracted and off topic, is that essentially, excuse me, here I'm more or less addressing people on the right, whether they be Christians or Jews, and maybe even more to the Christians, because I think I have more in common with the Christians who I'm addressing than with the Jews I'm addressing. I don't think I'm going to get through to the Jews I'm addressing. Those Jews see I have a beard and payas, they already turn off any possibility of listening to me, because they say, oh, he's a notorious cart extremist, which I'm not, and they won't even listen to me, because I have a beard and payas, and that's why I always say I'm much happier being a rabbi for Gentiles than a rabbi for Jews, because I can't, Jews are very difficult to deal with, It's like the story with Victor Van Seer. He's at the Jewish Defense League, and he said he met with Jesse Helms. Jesse Helms came to Jewish Defense League meeting. Jesse Helms, the late Senator Jesse Helms, said, I don't much like Jews, but I have to support them because the Bible says so. And Victor Van Seer said, I feel the exact same way. Although I do like a lot of Jews, but particularly, my own community are very, very normal, down-to-earth people. They don't have even though they dress funny, and so do I, they speak a different language and all these things, even though their culture, excuse me, is so radically different. Their way of life and their individual morals and everything are just so normal. They're just normal human beings. Whereas you see a lot of Jews who maybe dress more modern, their way of thinking is very different than how a lot of people think. I don't know. It's just it's hard to describe. Excuse me. So all this being said, excuse me, I'm trying to deal with a bit of an earache too. So, in this article they said, they don't understand they're getting rid of the Christian holidays. And, instead of saying it's Christmas break, it's winter break. Instead of Easter break, it's spring break. And yet they're putting in the Muslim holidays. And I can agree that there's an issue with that. But the issue is not a crisis, the issue is an opportunity. And we have to, first thing we have to do is stop assuming that all Muslims are radicals. They're not. Especially in America. America probably has one of the most moderate Muslim communities in the world. And we're blessed to have that. The average Muslim in America sees more of a role model in Thomas Jefferson. They identify very much. Thomas Jefferson is identified very much, with by Muslims in America. They love Jefferson, as do I. They see him Muslims will often say they'll see him as an honorary Muslim. And I might not say he's an honorary Jew, but he was a good friend of the Jewish community. And of Talmidei Chachamim, there was like one Talmid Chacham in the whole America, was Yisrael Ber Kershit, and he was a Talmid of Reb Nosson Adler, and they were friends, Jefferson and the Reverend Kershit. In those days, they didn't call them rabbi in America. There wasn't anyone with the title rabbi in America, only Reverend. A little bit later came a rabbi from Rice. Excuse me. But before it, we had, and I've spoken about reintroducing the title Reverend into the Jewish community, particularly for women. But that's a different story. We're going to have to move that along. Obviously, in the Reform and Conservative world, they have women cantors and rabbis, but within the Orthodox world, I think that would be a proper way to have women involved in a clergy sense. But I don't want to talk about that. Right now I want to talk about how Islam is not a threat to American Christians and Jews, but rather an opportunity that we can learn from how Muslims have learned from Christians and Jews in America how to use the American system to their benefit. And really, Christians and Jews should do the same thing. Meaning, it would be wonderful to have, I don't know how, in the Catholic Church, I don't know how old you have to be a Eucharistic minister. But if there was such a thing that a teenager could be a Eucharistic minister and minister to their fellow Catholics in a public school setting and celebrate Mass, I don't know exactly how that works. On public school grounds, just the same way that Muslims, on days of holy obligation, for example, depends on the state. I know some of them make them all on Sundays, and some of them make them, on the days they fall, Thursday, whatever, it depends. Like Ascension, it's usually a Thursday in New York and in Pennsylvania, and in other states it's a Sunday, different things like that. So let's say it came, Ascension Thursday, and in states where the church celebrates Ascension on a Thursday, and they would want to have a Mass in the public school so the kids could attend Mass, right? The Catholic kids in the public schools, they could attend Mass. They're going to say, well, they're going to try to fight it, but they're going to say, look, the Muslims got it. If the Muslims got it, you have to give it to us. And they're not going to take it away from the Muslims, so they're going to have to give it to the, it's unfortunate how things go, there's a story some years ago, I think it was in Seattle, that there was a Lubavitcher rabbi trying to put up a menorah in the airport, and there were several dozen Christmas trees throughout the airport. So he wanted one menorah. He didn't say take down the Christmas trees. He said he wanted to put up one menorah. And the airport said, if we start doing that, then we're going to have to do for every religion, and it's just going to get out of hand. We're going to take down the Christmas trees. or just left the Christmas trees and said no for the menorah because we live in a democracy and the majority of the country is Christian, and Christmas is a national holiday, and Hanukkah isn't. And really, there's no purpose. I mean, I'm very opposed to the Chabad ideology of putting up menorahs everywhere, and it goes against. I'm particularly opposed to Chabad doing it because it goes against the Chabad Hasidus that says the menorah belongs hidden in the house and doesn't belong in public. That's a Hasidic idea that Chabad is well aware of, and yet their last rabbi, he pushed away all of their traditions. But that's neither here nor there. That's an internal issue. It's none of my business. It's not for here, you know. But like you point out, you know, in the whole Curious Joel, there's no public menorahs. There's no menorahs put up on telephone poles or this or that. And you know, and if when it was still part of the town of Monroe, and the town of Monroe would have insisted on putting up wreaths around Christmas time on the telephone poles in Curious Joel, I don't think Curious Joel would have said one peep about it, because it's part of the theology of Curious Joel is that we're in exile and we're subservient in a sense to our Gentile hosts, and if they, you know, they wouldn't really oppose such a thing. But that's neither here nor there. We're getting off topic. However, within the public schools, I think now that the Muslims have done this, and no one's going to fight the Muslims because they're scared, even though they probably don't have to be, but you know, but they are. You know, there's nothing really to be scared of from the American Muslims, but once that's happened, I mean, I guess lawsuits, but whatever. But once that's happened, this is not a crisis. This is an opportunity. And first of all, like I said, the American Muslims are not a threat. We should, first of all, naturally, Muslims should be Republicans. Should be having more to do with the American right than to the American left. What do they have in common with the American left? Nothing. They don't believe in abortion. They don't believe in gay marriage. They don't believe in all of these things that the American left considers to be their sacraments. The Muslims oppose, and so naturally Muslims should be the natural allies of the Christian right and of the Jewish right. The problem with the Jewish right in America is that is Zionism. You know, but even with Zionism, they can find ways of coexisting. Really, the truth of the matter is Zionism doesn't hurt Muslims. Zionism only hurts Jews. Muslims have benefited more from the state of Israel than Jews have. You know, the Rabbanut didn't take over the Temple Mount. Over the rock and so forth, but they took over the Koisel, so now the Koisel is treif because the Zionists took it over, and that's a different story. You know, at least Meron is the one kosher place left, and the Zionists want to take over Meron. Neither here nor there. We're not discussing I've spoken about this for 25 minutes. My intention was to make like a 5-10 minute video. I think I got my point across though. Did I? Let me know in the comments below if I got my point across of how Ramadan, all these things, these are not threats to the American right. These are opportunities. The American right should embrace these things as ways for us to say, well, if the Muslims are getting these things, we should be able to get them as well. Meaning, Christians should be able to pray in public schools as well. Not to say that Christians are forcing Jews and Muslims to pray Christian prayers, but that Christians should be allowed as Christians to get together and pray, just like Muslims are allowed to get together as Muslims and pray. There's nothing wrong with the Muslims getting together and praying in public schools, and so too there's nothing wrong with the Christians, with the Protestants getting together to pray, with the Catholics getting together to hold a mass even. Why not? Why can't we have, and Jews also, we should be able to have mincha in public. So if you have a million of Jewish kids in a public school, Rachmana litzlan, they don't belong there, they don't belong in yeshiva. The same thing, the Catholics belong in Catholic schools and the Muslims belong in madrasas. We really shouldn't be having, and the Protestants belong in Christian schools. We should put the public schools out of business, because public schools are horrible places and evil places. But with that being said, unfortunately, because of the control that the left has over the public school system, we're kind of stuck with how we have the public schools for now. Try to encourage, although Baruch Hashem, in many states other than New York, they are able to work things out. Like in Virginia, if we could have what they have in Virginia and New York, basically free tuition for the private schools for people low income, it would change the whole world. But it is what it is. Academy wouldn't be struggling to try to get kids in. I mean, how many modern Orthodox kids now in the 5 towns are going to public schools with yarmulkes and tzitzis on? And what's going to be with them? Well, the yeshivas have to clean up their acts too, and it's not about English in the yeshivas. There's other issues, especially the modern yeshivas. The real problem to modern yeshivas is the Yiddishkeit. But Ezra Academy is a very good yeshiva. There is a real, authentic Torah environment. But this is basically what I want to say. The American right should not find Muslim prayers in public school to be a threat. They should find it to be an opportunity to bring more Christianity into the public schools and other religions as well. We do live in a multicultural society that is majority Christian, but we can celebrate Muslims and Hindus and Buddhists and Jews and Sikhs and this and that in this Christian society. That is an aspect of Christianity, of recognizing free will and so forth, and so therefore it's not a threat to Christianity. If people are, it's something that I've been saying, and people ask me for our Torah in this week's parsha, and I'll say it. I'll probably make a separate video about it. And I made it before. You can look the parsha Shlach. It says, before Moses sent out the spies, he sent 12 spies. 10 had a bad report. Joshua and Caleb had a good report. So he said, check out these cities. Where are they? Are they strong? Are they weak? Are they walled cities, fortified, or are they open camps? And the question is, what would you think is stronger, the walled cities or the open camps? And, the obvious answer would be that the walled cities are stronger, and so by virtue of the fact that I'm asking the question means that obviously the open camps are stronger. And the answer is that, structurally speaking, perhaps the walled cities are stronger. But on who's inside, it's weak people who need walls, and it's strong people. And the thing is, sometimes it's good to recognize your own weaknesses. It's not healthy to assume that you're strong when you're not. And there's no shame in that. It's just a reality. It's not an issue of shame. And so then the open cities are the ones that are strong. They don't need a wall. I was telling this over to someone who was from a Hasidic community and left. And I said, the Hasidim, they put up too many walls. I said, well, maybe they need those walls, or else they wouldn't survive. They recognize their weakness. The Rebbe Zisha said like this. He said that. It's a mission in Pirkei Avos. It says the brazen-faced people, the arrogant people, they go to hell, and the shame-faced people go to heaven. It doesn't say they go; it says to hell and to heaven. What does it mean? So Zisha explained, because in the next Mishnah it says. The previous Mishnah says, "Heavy as kanamer." It says you should be brazen like a leopard. You should be arrogant to a certain extent. You should be proud of who you are. So what does it mean? It says you should be proud, but then it says the proud people go to hell. So the answer is, the Rebbe Zisha explains, that it's not a saying that the consequence of arrogance is hell, and the consequence of shame is heaven. But rather, that the proud, not arrogant, arrogance is negative term, but the proud people who are proud to be servants of God, can go anywhere. They can go to a college and still be who they are, and they're not going to lose their identity. It's hell. The public school, the secular college are hell. They're hell on earth. I hear people say, I work in mental hospitals and prisons. Secular colleges and secular schools, public schools are much more hellish places than any prison or mental hospital. And they're much worse people in a lot of those schools. But a pious person, whatever religion you are, who is proud of who he is, can survive in those places. Maybe he shouldn't go there for other reasons. I saw Matt Walsh. He's talking. He was discussing, the question of whether or not to send children to public schools or should send to Christian schools. And he said, it's not the job of my 10-year-old kid to be a missionary. And I don't think he could handle being a missionary. Like Glenn Beck says, the ideal of the Mormon missionary is something that solidifies the older adolescent, the young adult, into their faith. Meaning, if you're going to go door to door to try to convince people of your ideas, whatever your ideas are, even if you're an atheist and you're going to be a missionary for atheism, and you're 18, 19, 20 years old, and you're going door to door trying to do that, pushing Mormonism, pushing Jehovah's Witness, pushing whatever you're pushing. The Lubavitchers, they get people to put tefillin, which, again, I criticize, but being involved in kiruv, and whatever it is. Although the question is, it really the job of the 18 to 19-year-old to do so? But the thing is, it's a learning experience. For sure, it's not the job of the 8-year-old or the 10-year-old. But is it the job of the, of the 18, 19, 20-year-old? That's the same thing, to go canvassing for a political cause, or whatever it is. What are we doing here? It solidifies who you are, but the thing is that more than likely a kid who's 8 years old and he's in a public school, he's going to lose his religion. I don't mean and probably also the way I spoke about yesterday, losing my religion is an expression of just being a nasty person, getting into fights and stuff, because these are horrible places. But there are the occasional people who can be strong. But the vast majority of people, the average person, cannot survive. Even people who are essentially strong struggle greatly when they're faced with these difficulties, because the human flesh is weak. The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. So when we engage ourselves in these things, we have to ask ourselves, what are we accomplishing here? Why, is it our job to be going out and being and being a missionary? Are we on the level to do that? Are we able to do that? Most people cannot. Most people, essentially need to be, if they want to maintain who they are, they need to be in a good environment. Like Maimonides says, that a person is naturally drawn after their environment. But certain people are able to survive outside of, their environment. And so that's the question of the walls, like what Robert Frost said, good walls make good fences make good neighbors. Which takes on a whole deeper meaning like this. And so, like I said, really and that kind of goes back to our question about the prom. I work in a prison, and I was talking to one of the psychologists. They have a program if the inmates participate in certain things, they'll get a piece of candy, but they have to eat it right then. They can't save it for later. And I said, maybe can we modify this somehow? Ramadan, there was one guy who was taken off the Ramadan list because he took a piece of candy, and he couldn't hold back, and it's really not fair. And we should be respecting that as well. It's a policy. These are the type of questions we have to ask also. I don't think a prom is the right environment for a pious Muslim. All right, Ramadan, I guess, even people who are not so pious when it comes to Ramadan, they wake up a little bit. But then fact of the matter is, you're living in a pluralistic society. You can make a decision. You don't have to be Muslim anymore just because you were raised Muslim. Doesn't mean you have to stay Muslim. And then you're in public school. More likely than not, a lot of kids, just like we see how many Jewish people, because they went to public schools instead of yeshivas, they gave up Judaism or adopted a more watered down version of Judaism. But quite often that watered down Judaism tends to be more radical in many ways than in many ways, mostly in political ways, in secular political ways. They wind up being the more political radicals instead of being a lot of these people would have been much better off. A lot of these people with Jewish ancestry would have been much better off converting to Christianity and being good church-going Christians than if they than being these secular Jews with communist leanings. Obviously it would have been better if they would be Orthodox Jews, but we're not going to get that. Many rabbis who I know of, they said it outright. They said, we don't need them, and he said, I sure as hell don't want them. There's no reason for us to be running after, putting tefillin on atheists, on communists, people who hate God, who hate religion, and just because they happen to be born Jewish. And meanwhile, you have very fine, pious, sincere, godly people who want to convert to Judaism, and you shut the door in their face. And that's what Lubavitch does, because they're racist. And then they're going to say, you don't have Avos Yisrael. Avos Yisrael means V'ahavta kamecha b'torah mitzvos. That's what it means, Avos Yisrael. I admit, there are people. I'm not going to, I'll be very liberal in a lot of things. I'll accept, like Rav Yosef says, that we can count some for a minyan. They say Baruch Atah Hashem Mekadesh Shabbos. Even they drive to shul, they're not allowed to drive to shul on Shabbos. But if they do, it doesn't make them, Kenochri L'chol Davar, the way the Rambam says, because they're not Mechal Shabbos for Hesed. They recognize it's Kedushas Shabbos. Because they say Baruch Atah Hashem Mekadesh Shabbos, they recognize that Hashem is Mekadesh Shabbos, and Shabbos is a special day. And they say Amen to Baruch Atah Hashem Mekadesh Shabbos. Fine, good, no problem with that. The question is these other issues. Someone who's a kaifer be'ikr. And the thing is, I don't accept. If someone walks into shul, we can assume that they did tshuva. That's another thing. I'm being very liberal with these ideas. They walked into shul, even they drove to shul, even they said. Yesterday they told me they don't believe in God, and then they're coming and they daven for the Amid, and they say the brachas, Torah Shebelev and Dvarim. I'll accept him as a Jew, but the guy out in the street, he's not in the shul, and he's not just someone who's like, I personally don't believe in God, but I respect Orthodox Judaism, although I have some issues with the people. Like people who I know personally. But someone who's a Soinei Adas, it is what it is. People take care of a little too far. It would be much better and be much more gained by investing more into potential gerim and learning with them and giving them opportunities instead of all the money that's being wasted on programs like Birthright and this and that. Alright, well, thank you for watching. God bless. Please like, share, and subscribe, comment, and all this.